snapshot of the evolution of modern Bollywood. I was not a huge fan of My Name is Khan, and I said so. He sent me a very nasty SMS saying that I thought you were a friend. It was unfortunate for Raju, for Vinod, for Abhijat, for Amit. He looked at me and he screamed and he ran in the other direction. People do feel hurt, and then I think they probably don't really want to see me. You'll have one guy who'll come in and who'll just, you know, from Mr. Bachchan to Shahrukh to now Ranveer perhaps.
We have this today one of the best film journalists, a noted author, and a fantastic film critic as well. Anupama Chopra, pleasure having you back on Bollywood Hungama.
Thank you.
Last time around we spoke to Anupama when her book on Shahrukh Khan had come about. Now her next book, First Day First Show, Writings from the Trenches of Bollywood, has come about. And a very good looking book in terms of the cover and all. I've been reading it, have not completed it. But it's basically as your writings in various newspapers and other publications that you have compiled into a book.
Yeah, it's basically my writing starting in 1993 with articles I did, well actually for Sunday Magazine. The first article is what I'd done for Sunday Magazine, all the way till 2010. And the idea is for it to sort of become like a snapshot of the evolution of modern Bollywood, because it's a different world now than it was when I first began. Right. So you know, if you read it, you go back and some of it almost seems comical now, you know, the figures that people talk about.
Yeah, that's true. 20,000 and 5,000.
Right.
Someone was getting 1,000 rupees.
So,
that's not Behel, I believe. She was getting,
yeah, you know,
right.
and they talk about stars getting 40 lakh or 50, and those were big things, you know, those were big numbers. So in that sense, it's sort of a perspective of how much the Hindi film industry has changed.
But still, I think Hum Aapke Kaun doing over 100 crore film at 100 crore gross at that point of time must have been really huge from any perspective.
No, that was a shocking event, because I don't think even people in the film industry knew that that was the potential that a film had. Nobody had talked about those kind of figures. Right. And because the Rajshris distributed the film themselves, as they do with all their movies. They went out and it really exploited the market. And if you remember, at that point, people used to release the videotapes.
Right.
Very close to the release. And those would be pirated and those would be on cable television, which is why most middle class people never went out into theatre. They did not release the film on VHS. So there was no other way to see it apart from going into a theatre. And they also managed to keep piracy at an all-time low. There were some 7 prints. So Hum Aapke Kaun was a watershed event. They kind of changed the way people did business.
You start out the book primarily, the foreword is by Shahrukh Khan, we'll come to that. But apart from that, it's an excerpt from your book on Sholay, for which I think you got a national award as well. It makes for riveting reading. Somewhere you feel that I think your brother Vikram Chandra, a noted author, novelist in fact, you've always, I think, wanted to write a novel as well. We haven't had a novel from you so far.
No.
The way you write, it's like a...
Thank you. That's very nice of you, but I don't have the courage to do fiction writing. I think it takes immense talent, and I don't have that. I do not. It's much, I think, harder to create your own worlds than it is to sort of narrate what already exists.
The fact is, when you criticize certain films and all, I was reading somewhere that Ramupal Verma, you met Ramupal Verma somewhere, and after she had criticized Agyat in a certain manner, and he just went away screaming in a opposite direction.
He looked at me and he screamed and he ran in the other direction, which was very funny. And Vinod was with me and he was like, "What did you say?" I said, "I didn't say anything. I didn't even say hello. He just saw me and he ran."
And I read another of your interviews, and you said that at maximum parties and all, you tend to hide behind the pillars and all.
Well, there have been, you know, we don't socialize a lot, which is a good thing. But in the few social do's that we're at, yes, there's people whose movies I have not been very kind to. You know, It is hurtful. You can't get away from it. You know, criticism is hurtful. I just hope that people know that it doesn't come from a personal space. You know, it's not. There's no agenda. It's my response to how I feel about a film. But yes, people do feel hurt, and then I think they probably don't really want to see me.
When you tell Mr. Bachchan that we'll agree to disagree on this one,
Yes.
and promptly a few days later we hear Mr. Bachchan, we see Mr. Bachchan posting that I'm having some meeting at Vidhu Vinod Chopra's house or something like that. So how is it? Because he has worked with your husband and you must have known them for ages now.
Of course. No, it isn't easy. It's not easy, but I think that the most basic and fundamental thing any film critic should have is integrity and honesty. And I think if you can't be honest, then you shouldn't do this. So it clearly isn't about having, like I said, any agendas that I like certain people or I don't like certain people or I like certain groups or gangs or cliques or anything. You know, it's truly how I feel about a movie, and it's not the only opinion in any shape or form. It's not the be all and end all opinion. It's simply my opinion. But I don't think it would be right to camouflage it or to temper it or to water it down because it's somebody my husband has worked with or somebody I know. I think that would be dishonest and it would be hugely unprofessional, and if I'm going to do that, I shouldn't do what I do.
Any instances that you remember?
Ramo was the most drastic, of course. You know, it is. I think there was one actor, you know, I hate to take names, but he sent me a very nasty SMS saying that I thought you were a friend, but it's not about being friends or not being friends. You know, it's simply if I think that the film doesn't work for me, I need to say that. Otherwise, I'm not being true to my viewers. You know, finally, they're watching me to get my take. And if I'm dishonest with that, then there is no reason for them to be watching me. So, it is very awkward. It is. I won't deny it. I feel terrible. I feel awful. You know, I wish I had nicer things to say, but if I don't, I just don't.
What is more awkward for you or maybe inconvenient for you? Say, for example, you've had bodyguards. There was a point of time when you guys had threats and all, just totally shadowing you all the time, or just anticipating that someone will be saying that maybe meri film aane wali hai and if you can, you know, be kind to my film.
You know, I have to tell you, nobody has ever said that. You hear so many things that, oh, deals can be made and you can, but how much are we worth? What would people pay for our opinions? And nobody's offered to bribe us. So.
Nandita Puri in an interview has recently said that film journalism is all about PR and pimping. How do you react to that?
Oh, that's harsh. That is harsh. Look, like any journalism, not specifically film, business journalism, political journalism, there will be some element of PR and the rest of it. So there is always an element, you know, you can't deny that. But I don't think that means that colors everybody with the same brush. Many of us are trying to do good work. Sure, we all need to be better educated. We all need to be, you know, have a more comprehensive knowledge. I always feel that I wish I knew more. I wish I'd watched more films. But I think to just reduce it to that is very simplistic.
Definitely, but still at the same time, you know, everything is subjective at the end of the day. You can't have absolute objectivity, I think, in almost anything. Say, for example, let's say Shahrukh Khan writes a foreword for your book, and the book that you've written on him, it goes into the bestsellers list, I think, on New York Times and those kind of things. So when a film of Shahrukh Khan comes about, how do you analyze it? What kind of relationship do you have personal that does he understand you?
Again, truly it's how I respond to the movie. I was not a huge fan of My Name is Khan, and I said so. You know, I thought that his performance was good, but I thought the film was very flawed, especially towards the end.
My name is Khan, and I'm not a terrorist.
I am always doing interviews and sort of I always have professional interactions with Shahrukh, with Karan. So yes, it is awkward. It is difficult. It is always difficult. I think it's always difficult to critique a film which has not been sort of made in a sort of cynical slipshod way, as so many films are. So many films are simply business propositions and it's just a question of getting the right people together and putting it out. Sure. But these are films made with a lot of passion. I'm sure a lot of hard work went into these movies. Sure, but for me, eventually, as a viewer, as a consumer, it didn't really work. So it is awkward. It is very difficult.
When we read Shahrukh Khan's foreword, I think he writes very well. He wrote the entire thing himself?
Yeah, well, he spoke it.
Okay.
It was all
he speaks very well.
Yes, he does.
He speaks damn well, in fact. Okay, and I think his expression is very good. One should wait for his book whenever it comes about. Okay, and when he just equates you and himself as an outsiders, both of you are outsiders. But like say you were an outsider, but now you become an insider. So how's been your journey from being an outsider to an insider in Bollywood?
It's been interesting. There's, like I said, been awkward moments because finally you have one foot on either side. So and it's also difficult because people do want to believe that you are compromised. It is a position of compromise. There's no denying it. In let's say the United States, people who review films don't even interview the stars because they see that as a conflict of interest. You have face-to-face interaction with the talent. You can't review the film. Here, I'm married to the mob. So it is a position of compromise. But the only way to battle that is to consistently sort of do the best you can in terms of objectivity, in terms of honesty, in terms of your integrity. But I think what it's also done for me is it has given me far greater respect and a far greater sort of awareness of how hard it is to make movies.
As you've spoken about the outsider and the insider part of it, now how do you look at it? Say for example, Shahrukh Khan is a rank outsider. He comes from Delhi. He makes it big in Bollywood. We have a tradition of star sons and daughters coming in and just making it big, and many a times they tend to get a bit more chances than the one who's not from Bollywood itself. How do you look at that aspect of the outsiders and the insiders aspect in Bollywood?
I think that is still it's not as ingrained as it was, but it is. I mean, I in the Shahrukh book I sort of compared it to the Chakravyuh that Abhimanyu broke into, because it is such a closed industry. It was. I think now, at least in terms of directors, in terms of talent, the non-star talent, I think there are more openings, there are new voices. People want to get people from outside because it's the story you want to tell. It's not so much whose son and whose daughter you are. But in terms of stars, yes, it's still very much about, and you'll find that every few years you'll have one guy who'll come in and who'll just, from Mr. Bachchan to Shahrukh to now Ranveer perhaps, who just come in, who all they have is their talent and they will get picked up. And I think that's very hard now.
More transparency now.
Well, more transparency and I think just more opportunities.
Being Vidhu Vinod Chopra's wife, I think has a lot of, in a way, baggage as well.
You're being polite.
I've read certain interviews, I think one of the interviews of both you guys together, and apart from that, your sentiments about how things happen because of the kind of relationships he has had in Bollywood and continues to have. He makes for fantastic, actually, I'd love to interview him. I've interviewed him once, but I got fantastic bites and they really made a lot of impact. How is it being a Vidhu Vinod Chopra's wife, has it?
Well,
and balancing it out as a journalist.
The thing is, we've always kept it separate. Those are two separate identities. I do not ever function publicly as his wife. Sure. I have no sort of standing in Vinod Chopra films. I do not produce those films. I'm not involved with those films. So I think the only way to do it really is to keep two separate identities, which is what we have. And like I said before, we're not very social. So that makes life a little easier. I think it would be very hard to be a film critic if you're going out and partying with the same people whose films you're critiquing the next day. I think that would really make life hard. But since we're pretty much hermits, it doesn't matter.
Now, When the entire Chetan Bhagat controversy happens, you are an author yourself. How do you look at it as such?
I just think it was unfortunate from all ends. I think it was unfortunate for Chetan, who I've interviewed also. It was unfortunate for Raju, for Vinod, for Abhijat, for Amir, because it was unnecessary.
Maybe things could have been done, sorted out before and it's...
Absolutely. These are things that even if you are unhappy, I think the graceful thing to do is always talk face to face. You never need to make a tamasha of things. You just don't need to do it. And they all did it. I'm not just saying Chetan did it. I think Vinod was equally at fault.
Made for very good television, in fact.
It did, which is why we don't let him out of the house anymore. but I just think we have to learn to be more graceful about these things, and I wish we had.